Welcome to OOTO TV, the out-of-the-office investigation from the past into the future of health. This time, we're discussing dishonesty, deception, and lack of sincerity in relationships and at work. My name is Alex, and with me is my colleague, Ben.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ben. In this investigation, we're exploring a topic that honestly touches every single aspect of our lives. It's like this hidden corrosion that can undermine our careers, our friendships, and, even our own mental well-being.
That's it exactly, Ben. We're going to examine not just why deception happens, but really look at the cascading damage it causes. And maybe most importantly, we're going to lay out a practical roadmap for how we can all help build a culture of honesty and accountability, both for ourselves and in the places we work.
I'm Alex, and what's so fascinating about this slide is how it frames our entire discussion with such incredibly high stakes. The pressure to just appear sincere, well, it isn't new. This quote is a stark reminder that throughout history, sincerity, or the lack of it, has been a tool of power and control. It shows that the performance of truth can become way more important than the truth itself, and the consequences, both for people and for politics, can be massive.
I'm Ben, and that quote just brings it right back home to our daily lives, doesn't it, Alex? I mean, it's one thing to talk about historical regimes, but it's a completely different thing when you're the one facing the personal fallout of a broken promise from someone you love, or you're trying to navigate a workplace where you just can't trust what your colleagues are telling you. That's where the damage really hits, day in and day out.
I'm Alex. You're absolutely right, and that's exactly why we've structured this explainer as a journey, moving from diagnosis to prescription. We're going to investigate the problem first, really get our hands around it, and then explore the solutions. Because we have to be clear, understanding dishonesty, deception, and lack of sincerity in relationships and work affects relationships, professional decisions, and actions.
I'm Alex. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick off our diagnosis by untangling what we call the web of lies, to get a grip on what deception really is. Then, we'll move on to the 7 signs of insincerity, super practical stuff. From there, we'll actually try to quantify the high cost of untruth. After that, we're going to pivot to the solutions, moving beyond blame to build real accountability. And finally, we'll lay out the honesty prescription. So, let's get started with the diagnosis.
I'm Alex. All right, first things first, we need to have a really clear understanding of what we're even talking about. The word deception immediately makes us think of these huge, elaborate lies, but the reality is so much more subtle. Deception is not just about telling an outright lie.
I'm Ben, and that's the crucial point right there. It's a huge spectrum. An outright lie, sure, that's obvious. But a strategic omission, that can be just as damaging, if not more so. Think about a manager who praises a project in a big meeting, but strategically leaves out the fact that a junior employee did 90% of the work. No technical lie was told, but reality was absolutely misrepresented. Or what about manipulating through emphasis, exaggerating your tiny role in a huge success while totally downplaying what everyone else did? It's all part of the same deceptive toolkit.
I'm Alex, and this slide just brilliantly illustrates how one tiny act of dishonesty can spiral completely out of control. It's almost never a single event. It just becomes this complex, unmanageable web of deception. Let's say you lie about a doctor's appointment to skip a meeting you're dreading. Simple, right? But then your boss casually asks for a doctor's note. Well, now you have to invent a story about the clinic's strict privacy policy. Then a coworker asks if you're feeling better, so you have to invent symptoms. Suddenly, you're the director of this entire fictional narrative. And as the source material from workplace ethics advice points out, from email threads to paper trails, it is impossible to validate and corroborate all your lies. It's exhausting.
I'm Ben, and living inside that lie, trying to maintain that web, it takes such a severe toll. It's not just about the external fear of getting caught, it's the internal conflict that just eats away at your self-esteem and your mental health. Psychology Today makes this fantastic point that this violation of our own values, it doesn't just create guilt, which is feeling bad about something you did. Over time, it morphs into shame, which is feeling bad about who you are. You end up creating this huge gap between the person you're pretending to be and the person you know you are, and that gap becomes a source of constant, gnawing anxiety.
I'm Alex. So if dishonesty is so damaging, how can we start to spot it? Now, this isn't about becoming some kind of human lie detector, but it is about learning to recognize patterns of behavior. And this is vital, because identifying dishonesty, deception, and lack of sincerity in relationships and work is critical to success. You're listening to OOTV, with research by author Paul Beulah.
I'm Alex. This list is incredibly practical. Let's dig into a couple of these. Inconsistent body language is a classic, right?
It's that total mismatch between words and actions. Someone tells you they're so excited about your promotion, but their arms are crossed, their smile is tight and doesn't reach their eyes, and their whole body is angled toward the door. The body is telling a much more honest story than the mouth is.
I'm Ben, and I think number 2, excessive flattery, is one we often get wrong. Look, genuine praise is specific, it's earned. Excessive flattery is vague, it's constant, and it feels transactional. It's not, hey, you did a great job on the data analysis in that report. It's, oh my gosh, you're just the smartest person in the whole company, everything you do is brilliant. It feels like a tool to get something, not an authentic observation.
I'm Alex. And really, that's a question for all of us to think about. It's pretty easy to spot these signs in other people, but it takes some real courage to recognize when we might be on the receiving end of them, or maybe even doing them ourselves. Number 4 on that list, a lack of empathy. That's a huge red flag. Our brains have what's called a mirror neuron system, and it's designed to help us feel what other people are feeling. So when someone consistently just can't seem to connect with your emotions, whether it's your excitement or your distress, it could be a sign they aren't genuinely invested in you or in the relationship.
I'm Ben. Okay, now let's scale this up and see how this builds from the personal to the professional. The impact on a business is just staggering. And it's because, let's be blunt, dishonesty, deception, and lack of sincerity in relationships and work is extremely harmful and destructive.
I'm Ben. $3.5 trillion. That is the estimated annual loss that organizations face because of deception and fraud, and that's according to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. It is a colossal figure. To put that in perspective, that's bigger than the entire gross domestic product of countries like the United Kingdom or India. This is a number so vast, it shows you how deeply this problem is embedded in our economic systems. This isn't a rounding error, it's a full-blown systemic crisis. I'm Alex, and this data right here shows the external cost. That $3.5 trillion is often internal loss, but look at the damage on the outside. 80% of people will choose products and services based on how ethical they think a company is. Consumers vote with their wallets, and more, they're choosing to support businesses that operate with integrity. A ruined reputation doesn't just feel bad, it directly hammers the bottom line and is incredibly difficult to ever build back.
I'm Ben. Okay, but Alex, this table from the National Communication Association suggests it's not always about bad apples, and this is my 10% contrary view. Look at that very first line, corrupt system deception. The motivation listed is survival. The source material notes that in these cutthroat organizations, deception actually becomes a necessary survival skill. So are we just blaming individuals for making a rational choice inside a toxic system? If the culture punishes any sign of failure and only rewards perfection, then CYA deception isn't really a character flaw, it's a defense mechanism. I'm Alex. You know, Ben, that's a fantastic point, and it's the perfect pivot to our prescription phase. You're absolutely right. If the system itself is part of the problem, then the solution has to be systemic too. We can't just fire our way to an honest culture. And this is exactly why targeting an approach to identify and dismantle dishonesty, deception, and lack of sincerity in relationships and work improves quality of life and functionality.
I'm Alex. This shift from blame to curiosity it's everything. Just look at the difference in the language. Why did you miss the deadline? That question immediately puts someone on the defensive. Their brain just switches into fight or flight mode, and I guarantee you will not get an honest answer. But asking, I noticed the deadline was missed, what were the challenges? That invites a collaborative conversation. It opens a dialogue to fix the process, not just punish the person. This is the absolute foundation of psychological safety.
I'm Ben. Yeah. And this is the ideal, of course. But the engaged organization source points out a pretty harsh reality. You hear so many executives say people are our greatest asset, but then they treat the HR department, the department literally responsible for those people, as an operational cost to be minimized. So until HR is actually seen as a profit center that drives real value, its ability to truly invest in and lead this kind of deep, long-term cultural change will always be limited by its budget. There's just a fundamental disconnect in how so many organizations operate.
I'm Alex. That's a really valid challenge, but it's one we can start to overcome with clear, actionable frameworks that don't necessarily require massive budgets. It really starts with a mindset shift. Because designing methods to respond to dishonesty, deception, and lack of sincerity in relationships and work improves efficiency and success. And when we define constraints, limitations, and boundaries, dishonesty, deception, and lack of sincerity in relationships and work can be replaced by effective routines. You're listening to O2OTO TV with research by author Paul Bulow.
I'm Alex. Now this is a simple but incredibly powerful ethical code.
It was developed by Herbert Taylor for Rotary International way back in the 1930s. Before you speak, before you send that email, before you act, you just run it through these 4 questions. It's a foundational routine for building personal and professional integrity. It's like this little mental checklist that immediately shifts your focus from what can I get away with to what is the right thing to do for everyone involved. It's a simple tool, not a complex rulebook, and it costs absolutely nothing to implement.
I'm Ben, and the key word for this entire slide is consistency. A real culture isn't built with a single all-hands meeting or some inspirational poster you hang on the wall. It's the daily practice of these steps. And step 5, fostering psychological safety, is the one that holds all the others up. As the AIHR source really emphasizes, this means creating an environment that's free of the fear of blame, where mistakes are treated as learning opportunities, not reasons for punishment. Because without that safety, you will never get the truth, especially when the truth is difficult to hear.
I'm Alex. I think that quote just perfectly captures the essence of what our prescription is all about. It's not this passive state of just avoiding lies. It's an active, ongoing commitment to seeking and living in the truth.
I'm Alex. So, if we boil it all down, the crucial point is this. We've diagnosed the illness of deception, from the deep personal psychological costs all the way up to the staggering trillions in business losses, and we've seen the clear behavioral signs that we can all watch out for.
I'm Ben. And we've also prescribed a cure that moves way beyond just blaming individuals and instead focuses on fixing the system. It requires building systemic accountability through curiosity, setting crystal clear expectations, and using actionable ethical frameworks like that 4-way test.
I'm Alex, which brings us right back full circle to where we started, the immense political and personal weight of sincerity. That Soviet story is an extreme example for sure, but it's a powerful and instructive reminder of what happens when sincerity is weaponized and trust is mandated from the top down, rather than earned from the bottom up. I'm Alex, and that's really the thought we want to leave you with. Building a culture of honesty absolutely starts with each one of us, with our own personal commitment to integrity. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that we're all navigating a world that, well, it often seems to reward the exact opposite.
I'm Ben. It's a difficult question for sure, and there are no easy answers. That tension between our personal values and the systemic pressures we face is very, very real. Thanks so much for joining us on this investigation from OTV TV.